one of the highlights of our discussion is not just what is going on, but the phase where you actually tell as a CISO yourself what organizations should do. And of course, we will be linking to that report as well. Let's now talk about mitigation a bit. When a CISO reads this sorting report, listens to this discussion, and wants to actually take action, what concrete steps do you recommend? Now it depends, every industry is different, but there are some fundamental things when it comes to security one should do. How should they think about controls like bot management, API security? And the interesting thing is that actually Akamai offers a lot of solutions, so they don't actually have to go and find them. And more importantly, AI specific safeguards to reduce fraud and abuse risk. You earlier also mentioned how to work with your team, what how this work, but it's less about, oh, they should do that, but versus have a process in place, very concrete process that can evolve over time as well.
Yeah, and it's funny as a CISO, you talk about people, processes, and technology, and our industry tends to be very poor at processes, which is why we have a lot of heroes. That one guy that can do everything, but that's also a choke point. A single point of failure. So I really think that is important. And I will emphasize that, all the data I talk about here comes from us protecting customers. When I give the stats on protecting large language models, it's from our experience with our AI firewall. When I talk about the API stats, it's our protecting APIs. And so absolutely, these best practices are going to be a reflection of what we see our customers doing to be successful. So one of the things, if you have a fraud problem, how do you focus on just that fraud problem? And so we took a section of the report and we went back to those industry best practices. And we think the best one is the OWASP, kind of the web page group. And they put out years ago the top 10 threats for web pages. And then APIs became popular, and they were different attack vectors, different attack techniques. And they needed different tools to protect them, because suddenly you had things like business logic abuse. And that was a very different kind of attack. And so then, we had the top 10 for APIs. And then large language models came out, and within like a year, it already had updated because it's such a fast moving. So there's a top 10 for large language models. And what we did is we looked across all of these and we said, which one of these apply to fraud? Not just general crime, but to fraud specifically. And so within that, we said, access control, authentication, preventing injection attacks. Those are probably the top ones for stopping fraud. And so, then that maps down to the specific attack techniques: prompt injection, SQL injection, server-side request forgery, business logic abuse, configuration and plugin integration, protected data, healthcare, credit card, finance, and it's a much longer list. But you can kind of see, if you map those kind of functions, then you can go back to your IT and your developer teams and your security controls, and you can say, let's focus let's focus our developers on preventing injection attacks. If we just do that for the next quarter, we're going to reduce our fraud. Let's make sure, if we can only tune and update, some of our tools, because we're always behind the power curve, let's focus on the tools that prevent fraud. And so this is just a way to think about, hey, again, I was a CISO for Nordstrom Bank, ran a lot of Nordstrom's infrastructure. Coming up right now, I really miss the Nordstrom discount I used to have, but that aside, they might want to focus on just fraud. And so that's a way where we've enabled that thought process. Overall, as I think about this, we talked about it before, blocking's not going to work. What does work is visibility, situational awareness, and then management. And so the first thing, is deploy AI-specific security controls, the controls that are designed for large language models. The next is right behind it. APIs are what are interacting with that. DDoS is not on the top 10 for OWASP. DDoS is another protection. So those are the two things, make sure those controls are out there, well configured, managed. You have visibility on them. And then start asking yourself question, can I see scraping? If I can't see scraping, and it's probably happening, then if I can't see, things like account takeover attempts, then I probably want to go in and figure out what's going on with my visibility. Because if I can't see those examples, that's a prime use case, then I'm not sure I trust those controls. Next, moving out of the tactical into more, the programmatic, the strategic, how can I work with my board to have a risk-based bot management approach? What is their risk appetite? What is my goal? Am I okay with frenemies? You know, am I okay with having some friction that my customers would experience to reduce fraud, reduce scraping, reduce my over cyber crime impact costs? So that's a huge part of making sure I'm on the same page with my leadership. And then finally, go back and use those external capabilities, those frameworks, and leverage those as a way to build your program quickly and be able to say to both your leadership and worst case, if you're in some kind of a class action or lawsuit or an audit finding, you can go back and say why you made your decision and that in fact you did use best practices.